When any new first-person shooter game comes out, there's always those weapons, you know? The weapons that you unlock as you play the game some more, and as you equip it for the first time, they catch you going, oh, hang on now. You know, one thing leads to another, and now they're very much your favorite weapon in the whole game. Yeah, this little pocket rocket that we're looking at today has had that very effect on me here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our weapon review for the SCW-10 submachine gun in Battlefield 6, an SMG that I'm sure needs very little introduction, as I'm sure a lot of you have either been slapped absolutely silly by this thing, or it's been your compadre for taking enemies to Pound Town. Today, we're going to be diving into the stats for this thing, going over the pros, the cons, but most importantly, what attachments you can run on it to take it to the next level. If you're enjoying the series, a like on the video goes a long way to support it, and it's of course free, and also be sure to get subscribed for all of our future weapon reviews that are coming out real soon. But formalities aside, let's get straight into the review and start talking about the weapon. As is tradition here on the channel, we're going to be kicking off with the damage model for the SCW-10, and let's make no mistake here, this is very much the party piece of the weapon's entire setup, which makes it officially the deadliest weapon that we've reviewed by multiple metrics to date. The SCW-10 starts off with a damage of 33.4 within the 10 meter mark, making it our first weapon in the arsenal, which will take down a target in a whopping 3-shot kill. Now, being an SMG, that is going to taper off at breakneck pace, and while yes, the minimum damage range extends all the way out to 75 meters before we start seeing that 8 bullet to kill requirement, it doesn't take long before the weapon's effectiveness does begin to struggle by comparison to the benchmark it sets at close range. Beyond the 20 meter mark, we already see our bullet to kill requirement hit 5 shots. So make no mistake, this weapon rocks a stellar backhand in the CQC domain, but it loses its spark as the distance grows at a rapid pace. Thankfully, the game's default headshot multiplier of 1.34 times does some pretty nutty stuff to the weapon as well, especially if you catch yourself engaging at those slightly longer ranges. While our headshot multiplier doesn't shave any bullets to kill off the threshold in the maximum damage range, it does net us some improvements in the 20 to 35 meter distances here by shaving off a shot to kill per damage range, which when you have a weapon that does lose its potency at this kind of pace, that should not be discounted here by any means necessary. But here comes the cherry on the cake here, which makes everything special. When we take the damage and combine it with a staggering 800 rounds per minute fire rate, we are then left with a straight up diabolical time to kill of 151 milliseconds within the 10 meter range, of which is consistent across headshots and body shots. That is absolute CQC domination, guys. It's getting to the point where the time to kill will outpace shotgun users, because if you catch them off guard, they won't even have the human reaction time to actually react to you to nullify your efforts. The pace in which this thing drops people is staggering. So staggering at times that you yourself can't even react to how fast people are dropping, which then leads you to burning more ammo than you actually have to. Obviously, this tapers off pretty quickly, but I think we all get the idea by now that this thing, it's designed to get down and dirty in the yard rather than sitting off from the sidelines. So what's the catch here? Well, for the first time ever on our handling section of a weapon review, I'm going to draw your guys' attention down to the ammo stats as opposed to our accuracy graphs. And that right there is the catch. A 15 round magazine by default that is reloaded in, yep, you've got that right, 2.6 seconds by default. And just like that, the Achilles heel emerges. While this is one of the most devastating weapons in the game, it demands some serious patience and skill from yourself to make sure that you quite simply don't get caught off guard by that magazine size. We're going to talk a little bit more about tips and tricks on how to manage that in a second here, but for now, we'll quickly touch base on some of the other elements that are at play here with the weapon's handling. Recoil-wise, it's not that special. The weapon kicks up with a very slight kick to the right, so a pretty standard pull down on the mouse or on your controller stick, and to the left will do the job nicely in managing this recoil. We can see that the bloom on the weapon actually takes a fair bit of effort to kick in, and it's actually also worth me pointing out here that I equipped the 25 round mag to get this recoil graph today, so for the smaller mag kits, the recoil is actually likely to stay even in the yellow zone on this graph a lot of the time too. Hipfire wise, it's a pretty sloppy weapon, not gonna lie. We see some pretty erratic spread here that sees rounds blooming every which way, which is going to require some attention in the attachment side of things if you see yourself hip firing with the weapon often. Again, something we're going to need to note a bit later here. Wrapping up the piece, we've got an ADS time of 167 milliseconds, which is pretty on par for SMGs in the arsenal, and a muzzle velocity of 428 meters per second, which is unfortunately going to make this feel like a bit of a slug when firing at moving targets at range here. Anyway, that right there, guys, is the breakdown of the SCW-10 from top to bottom, and now, above all else, it should be pretty clear as to why this thing has become a mainstay among so many people's loadouts, especially in the higher echelon of players in the community who know how to push with infantry. It is, quite frankly, the height of risk versus reward of the SMG category in this game, barring maybe, and I do mean maybe, the KV-9 as a competitor. The SCW-10 is a weapon that demands the highest level of precision, decision-making, and confidence in your gameplay skill to excel with. But when you click with it and when you execute accordingly, it is a weapon that will reward you with some of the most efficient kills you can achieve in Battlefield 6. This weapon's close quarters combat time to kill is not something to be messed around with, and it more often than not will drop targets faster than they will even register you being a threat. But to do that, you not only need to play aggressive, but you need to play smart. The weapon's default 15 round mag, but even also its 20 and 25 round mag upgrades later on demand that you not only make the most of every shot, but also isolate and section off targets so the weapon can do its thing in isolation. Battlefield is a game that sees enemies grouped together frequently, so you can't just run in and spray down a whole squad carelessly with this thing with its ammo restrictions. You've got to pick away at targets carefully, isolate them into 1v1s on your terms, cut them off from the support, and force them into your world with this thing. While a lot of weapons in the Battlefield 6 arsenal can operate a bit like a sledgehammer and blunt force their way through groups of enemies at a time, the SCW-10 is a surgical knife on the battlefield. Lethal, but only when it can work at its own pace and precisely. You'll also be reloading this thing a lot, and the reload time on it adds up quickly between all of your little pit stops that you'll be going on. The downtime on this weapon is one of the highest in the arsenal. This is why isolating targets and giving yourself breathing room is so important. Slice the pie on angles to only engage select targets at a time. Find flanks to exploit where you have the drop. And having escape routes that you can bait enemies into where your CQC time to kill comes alive, these are all the things that you've got to master that really play into the weapon's strengths and make it come alive. If you treat it like any other gun in the game, it's going to start failing. Further to that, noting our hipfire accuracy and our restricted ammo flexibility, I'm just going to say, yes, this is an SMG, but get used to aiming down sights at every opportunity. This weapon is all about resource management and making the most of every single shot you can. You cannot afford to have shots randomly straying off and doing their own thing. So avoiding hipfire like the plague in the early days here with this weapon is highly recommended too. Look, it's a lot to consider on top of being forced to play in a very hectic, close quarters environment 24/7 to make the weapon worth it. A very difficult balance to find, if you will. But when you do find it and you catch yourself in a bit of a flow state with this thing, it comes alive in a way that very few weapons can match in this game so far. It's why it's rapidly become one of my favorite entries in the arsenal, but also a favorite entry of a lot of people in the community too. But with that all in mind, guys, let's take a moment to talk about builds and how we can take this thing from being just, a fun little menace to something that can actually change the flow of an entire match when left unattended. I've got two builds for you guys today, one of which really just aims to play off the weapon's strengths with giving you, more flexibility and crowd control capability, while the other is more leaning into turning this thing into the equivalent of 3 angry raccoons in a trench coat that have no thoughts, just malicious intent in their craniums. Our first build here is made up of the following: a Miniflex 1.0 sight, the 6.8-inch factory barrel, the light and suppressor, the slim angled grip, the 20-round mag, the tungsten core ammunition, and the improved mag catch. And in my opinion, after tireless amounts of testing, this is actually, with the attachment point economy in the game, the best way you can build out the SCW-10. The light and suppressor takes the already relatively light recoil pattern and dials it in just that little bit further, with a bit of help from our angled grip as well, which also improves our overall sight readiness and aim down sight times too. The 20-round mag is, in all honesty, the best bang for buck, given that the 25-round mag that you unlock later on in the piece just basically costs the equivalent of your firstborn child. You need to sacrifice a lot to get the 25 round mag on this gun, and it's a lot of sacrifice that I actually don't think you need to make on the gun. I think it's all benefits that can just be circumvented by playing smart in a lot of ways. The improved mag catch also helps to get a bit more efficiency out of the weapon as well, getting our reload speed down to 2.42 seconds, which is nothing major, but it's getting it under that 2.5 seconds, which is certainly a really nice touch. I also do want to quickly touch on the ammo choice here as well. Given Battlefield 6 sees enemies clustering quite frequently, and we're dealing with a weapon that gives us such a brutal lack of uptime, having the extra penetration damage when you do end up chaining targets back to back and shooting through multiple of them, I found the penetration ammo to be a lifesaver for this. While it does on paper have an impact on your recoil pattern, I found it to be pretty negligible on this weapon, all things considered, so I highly recommend putting this on personally. It just gives you that extra out in case you do come across a few targets that happen to be stacked up. But alright, we've talked about the cool, calm, collected approach. Let's dial up the drug intake for a while here and get a bit wild. Our second build rocks the following: a set of iron sights, the 6.8-inch factory barrel, the CQB suppressor, the 50mm green laser, the 20 round mag, tungsten core ammo, and the flashlight. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys, this build is far from the best for the weapon. In fact, I recommend that most people stick with the first build that we went through today. But, and this is a big but, there is something very therapeutic about running into a room with nothing but malicious intent and a thirst for blood, barrel stuffing and drilling people with a weapon that drops them in the speed of light, with a hipfire-centric kind of build. This build plays off of the chaos and at times does rely on a fair amount of luck to make it work, as you're catching yourself often in pretty ropey situations. But when it pays off, I can't deny that it's a ton of fun. Certainly don't recommend that this is your primary setup, but it's a fun thing to mix things up with every once in a while. Hey. Anyway, folks, with those two builds out of the way there, that is going to wrap up today's weapon review of the SCW-10 submachine gun in Battlefield 6. A lot of you guys have been requesting this one, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to backhand the like button. It does go a long way to supporting the channel, guys. And if you are new to the channel, consider subscribing to stay up to date with all the Battlefield 6 content we've got coming your way, guys. I'm having a lot of fun doing it for you guys right now. The game is honestly the most amount of fun I've had in a first-person shooter in quite some time, despite the complaints I've had with it lately, so I'm really enjoying getting this content out for you guys right now. And if you want to catch some live streams, I run them right here on YouTube, or I do them over on Twitch as well, so feel free to come check us out there too. But until next time, guys, I will see you all in the next video. Peace out. Have a good one, guys. Take care. Talk soon.